Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. June is, well, it's Pride Month. Happy Pride Month. It is also much less known, but I think it's Foster a Pet Month. And so this month we'll be focusing on trainings and talks and topics that are relevant to foster parents and foster dogs. Today I wanted to talk about some of the top behaviors that I think are important for foster parents to try to work on with their foster dogs when they have a very fearful foster dog. Some of these are going to seem pretty basic for those of you who have dogs who aren't particularly fearful, but you've got a really fearful foster dog. There are some basics that I think are the most important to start with. So let's take a look. Oh, this may be this may take me 1 second just 1 second sorry about this, while I replace the thing. Here we go. Skills for fearful foster dogs. So I just want to touch really briefly on what is fostering for anyone who's totally unfamiliar with it. Talk about what skills I think you can start with teaching your foster dog if you have a fearful foster that might actually help them in their transition to that adoptive home and help them in your home as well. And then I'll include some examples in here of fearful foster dogs. All right, so briefly, what is fostering? This is usually temporary care of an animal in need of a home. It could be as short as a day or two. For some organizations, they'll do like weekend fosters or overnight fosters. And it can also end up being fairly long-term, depending on the situation. You're usually going to foster through some kind of organization, either a nonprofit rescue or possibly an animal shelter, and those can be municipal or private. And one way to look at sort of fostering, the time you're fostering a dog, is it's time you have and the rescue or shelter has to learn more about how the dog behaves in a home environment and teach them some skills that might help them do better in their new adoptive home, maybe make it more likely for that adoption to stick. All right, so first 3 skills to teach a fearful foster dog. Again, this is my opinion. And if you've got a foster dog who's not quite fearful, these will seem too simple, I'm sure. First is training the dog to eat treats in your presence. That might seem like a given, but it definitely isn't with many fearful dogs. Next, okay, now that they'll eat in your presence, can they follow treats if you throw them? And then for a third one, go to crate, I chose, and I'll talk about this more in a second, but because it's so all-purpose and it can get you get a lot of sort of must-haves done in terms of the dog's care. All right, so eating treats. Eating treats isn't something we usually think about as a skill or something to train, but if you have fostered really fearful dogs and they won't eat around you, you know it's not something you can take for granted. So it is absolutely not a given that a fearful dog is going to eat in your presence. It's really helpful if your foster will eat when you're nearby, since much of positive reinforcement training is done with food. And it's much easier to do a lot of that training if the dog will eat when you're right there. But training the dog to eat in your presence doesn't have to start with eating in your presence. And in fact, probably won't for a dog who isn't currently eating with you right next to them. So you may have to start with getting them to take treats, after you've left the room. And the dog doesn't need to necessarily eat from your hand in order for this to be helpful. And of course, most of these fearful dogs, as those of you know who work with them, they're not going to take a treat from your hand anyway in the beginning. This is eating treats. Having the dog eat treats around people is helpful for training and also will help pair both you as a foster and the new adoptive home, if you show them how to do this, the adopters with good stuff, with treats. And this is something that you can start on day one as a foster home. As soon as the dog is in your care, you can start building this skill of eating with you present. Oh, here, let me, I have a little video of Pancake. I believe it's all Pancake. When he first came to us, he would not eat with anyone in the room. So I can't really give you a step-by-step training plan for any particular dog because every dog will be different. But just as an example, so here's little Pancake early on. You can't actually see him here because he's hiding in the crate. So I just drop treats into his pen, into his like safe zone. And then I'm backing away, and I took this video to show sort of how long it would take him to come out and eat the treat after I left. So in this video, I may actually be standing right at the door to the room, which means it was several weeks into his stay with us. In the beginning, I would have to leave the room completely and kind of peek through the door from the kitchen if I wanted to see if he ate the treat. But here you see he was already starting to come out, only several seconds after I left. Here he is a little later. I am standing right next to the pen, and he is not hiding. So that was big progress. But I just dropped food in there, and you're going to see him. He wants the food. He like looks at the food, looks at me, looks at the food, looks at me. He's not quite willing to do it until I leave. So I think I just walked away there. He's watching me leave. Okay, and now I'm going to eat. So one of the first things I was looking at, I was working on here, was just seeing if I could reduce the time between me leaving and him eating. And I would just go in, drop treats, leave generally. And over time, he started coming out, quicker and quicker. Here, I think, yeah, I'm sitting there at the computer. So this is where we started to have him eat when I was in the room. And in order for this to work, I'd have to put food in there, sit down, and not look at him. You see, I'm trying to kind of peek and see what he's doing, and then tossing more treats. But if I turned my body toward him, that would be too much and he would hide. But he was at least now eating with me in the same room with him, which is a big deal. Here's one, I think, where he actually would eat the treat I dropped in, even though I'm still standing up next to the pen. That was a big deal because standing up was scarier. And we did eventually work up to this. This is actually the first time I think he took a treat from my hand. That took us a long time. And most of your foster dogs are not going to be probably as fearful as Pancake. But just to give you an idea, this was something, and my friend Debbie Jacobs consulted with me and helped me sort of take a step back from my frustrations working on this and help me work through just getting him to eat with me around, because I really needed that and did need to treat that as a skill to be trained before I could do much more with him, with food at least. All right. So that was eating treats in your presence as a skill that foster dogs benefit from. The next is following treats that you throw. So you throw a treat, away from you, and the dog goes there and gets it. Why do we want dogs who can follow? Well, I should mention, a lot of people say, well, why do you have to teach a dog to follow treats? I wish you didn't. And many dogs will just do this right away, although a very fearful dog might not. And even non-fearful dogs, I bet some of you have had dogs or worked with dogs where you throw a treat and the dog just kind of stares blankly at you. It's like they didn't see it or they don't know what to do. So this is definitely something to train intentionally, because it will be helpful for the adoptive home as well if you've got a dog who is pretty fearful. So if a dog will follow treats, you can move them around quite a bit without forcing them, which is very important if you're trying to, build skills and build trust with this fearful dog. So that means that you could move them without putting a leash on. And many of these real fearful pups, you cannot put a leash on easily early on. And you can move them without like cornering them and trying to pick them up, which not only is, unpleasant for both of us. None of us want to scare our dogs, and the dogs don't like being scared. It also puts you at risk of a bite if you try to corner or force a fearful dog. Some basic important sort of skills or I shouldn't say skills, but behaviors that you can get or prompt with throwing treats if the dog will follow them are things like go outside to pee, come back inside, go into another room, like the room that you want them to sleep in, maybe. Move away from me if I'm scary, move away from whatever, the open door. A food lure or a food prompt is the first step in many training plans. So that's another great reason to teach your foster dog to follow treats. And again, if this is something you can show the adopter how to do and coach them on it, it again pairs them with good stuff with these treats and get rid of this and gives the adopters right away from day one an alternative way to move the dog where they may otherwise not know what else they can do besides sort of dragging the dog on leash or cornering and picking up. So that's good for everybody. Oh, video. All right, let's take a quick look at examples of dogs following treats and how that's helpful. Some of you have seen this video already. I used it recently. Pancake doesn't look that scared here. This was filmed a bit after we needed it. But my husband was trying to get Pancake to go outside and stay out there, and he didn't want to when I wasn't home. And so he would go out with him like this. Here he's going to throw treats. He's like, look, Pancake, I have treats. Pancake goes and follows those treats. And now my husband can go back inside and close the door so Pancake's out for long enough to, do his business outside. Here's another example of using treats to get a dog in and out of a car. If a dog's really phobic of a car, they're probably not going to follow treats this way, but it's just an example of using treats to move them without, pulling them out or trying to force them back into the car. Here's a video using a thrown treat to move a fearful dog away before you stand up. So a lot of you who have worked with or have timid dogs, you know that someone standing up from a sit or a crouch is startling and sometimes might cause them to bark or freak out somehow. So here Sadie is going to throw the treat away, and when Annetta moves away, she then stands up without scaring the dog. All right, so we've covered eating treats, following treats. Go to crate. I'll tell you briefly why this made my top 3. If you think about the basic care you need to do and the difficulties that you face with a dog who doesn't like much handling, Go to crate can cover a lot of your bases. So, for instance, you can, if the dog will go into a crate, you can then carry that crate to the car and get them to the vet. If the dog is afraid of going up and down stairs, but that's necessary in your home, you can carry a crate up or downstairs. I realize that with a larger dog, this becomes a much bigger hassle. Probably you're not going to have them go up and you're not going to carry a huge dog crate up and downstairs. You could still, with 2 people, lift a large dog crate into a car, though, if you need to get them to the vet. You can use a crate to get a dog out or inside. Again, with a large dog, not so convenient. I have done this with small dogs. I think I have a picture in a second of Pancake using that. Also, it's a way to confine and separate a fearful dog from family members, from visitors, from other pets. Limit access to the house, particularly if the dog isn't house trained. Here's an example of Pancake peeing right next to his crate. Early on, when we moved him up here to Tahoe, he was too afraid really to move around the house at all, and he definitely would not go outside because that would require him to walk through the kitchen. So what I did for a little while was he would go to his crate. I carried his crate out and had a little pen for him outside. Really carrying the crate can also be fairly traumatic. So I ended up stopping this after a little while and just letting him use the potty pads inside. But if you needed to do this, this is just an example of how you can get around some of these barriers that face you when you are fostering a dog who's really, really too scared to move around or be handled in the way that is required for a lot of their care. All right. If you have any questions during or after this video has ended, please go ahead and post them under the video and I'll get an alert. For the month of June, we are running a special for folks involved in rescue and sheltering. At the bottom here is a code you can use to get 20% off any of our classes, or an initial private consult if you sign up in June. So this is if you're working as a foster parent or working for a rescue shelter, go ahead and take advantage of this and see if you can get some help for your fearful pup. The link in blue here is our membership, which is the name is Reactive Dog Academy, which we're going to be changing shortly. It doesn't really reflect what we do in that membership, but primarily we're working on skill building and skill building for fearful dogs. So this might be another affordable way to get training support if you are a foster parent or working in shelter or rescue and would like to get a little more help with training. All right, folks, I hope this was helpful. Everyone have a wonderful week. Please do shoot us a message if you have any questions, if you have any trouble using the discount code, or you have any questions about, fostering fearful dogs and issues surrounding that. We are happy to help. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I know this is some of this was pretty basic, but those of you that are fostering dogs that just hide or really, really, really scared, and it's hard to do just normal day-to-day care, I hope some of this resonated with you. All right, and I will see you next week with another foster dog centric topic.